Welcome to another episode of SJHL Insider. I am Clark Munroe here at IKS Media inside the SJHL Insider office. We got a lot to talk about. The last 2 days, there's been 5 games. There's a bunch of games coming up this weekend, and there's been some really interesting playoff developments as well in the last couple of days, and in the near future as well, there will be. And today on the show, I'm going to be joined by legendary voice of the Flin Flon Bombers, Rob Hart. Very excited to talk to Rob. It's been a while since I've talked to him. I know he's been on this show this year once, and I know we had him on last year as well, but it's always a good time talking to Rob. So really excited to get him on the show. We'll get a deep dive on the Flin Flon Bombers and maybe a little bit around the league as well. We'll see how much time we have. If anybody knows Rob, he is not shy. So let's just go with that. So I'm really excited to talk to him in a few moments, so stay tuned for that. But before we do that, we have to, of course, thank our wonderful sponsors. And, of course, our main one for all of our broadcasts is UPL. UPL is the main sponsor for this broadcast, SJHL Weekly, and all of our playoff previews and all those things. So thank you to UPL. Of course, also Borgo, Cantera Seeds, Capital Auto Mall, Chevrolet, Great Western. By the way, shout out to Great Western. I don't know if you guys have been to the Briar if you're around Regina or in Saskatchewan, and you have been to the Briar. Original 16 and Great Western are sponsors at the Patch. I got to chat with my good buddy Chris Hubbard there from Great Western. Always a good time talking to Chris, so shout out to everybody at Great Western. Just a quick one. Big fans of those guys. Nutrient, RBC, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Sask Lotteries, Tourism Saskatchewan, Sask Energy, SGEU, and SGI. Without the sponsors, these lights wouldn't be on, and it would be a lot darker of a show. So not in a sense of the content would be darker in a bad way, just the lighting would be darker, just in general. But you know what? We have a lot to get into, and so with that in mind, let's do it right now. Let's get into the hat trick. One of these days, and maybe I'll just work on this with Jamie Neugebauer, this could be like our little pet project here, is we have to like tape, again, like a bag of hats just above our heads. So we have to go find some hats at like a secondhand store or something and just drop hats on the studio every time we do the hat trick. One of these days we'll get there. Topic one, of course, as we always do, we have to have a look back at the last couple of days of games. So let's do that now and look at Tuesday's scores. We got a 5-2 win for Nipawin. Now this one, if you watched SJHL Game Day the other day, the loser of this game was eliminated from the playoffs, and we'll get to this in a sec, but Nipawin keeps their playoff hopes alive with a 5-2 win over Yorkton, and Weyburn actually clinched a playoff spot, 4-2 win, with a 4-2 win over Notre Dame. And going into Wednesday, we had 3 games on the docket. Humboldt with a 6-2 win over Estevan, tripled them up. Melfort tripled the Flin Flon Bombers up 3-1 in a big game there. That was a marquee matchup. And Melville had a huge night against the Notre Dame Hounds with a 7-1 victory. Of course, all of our lookbacks are brought to you by Sask Lotteries. So let's dive into these games just a little bit more here. Weyburn, 4-2 win over Notre Dame. Weyburn officially clinches their playoff spot. They moved up into 6th place ahead of Kindersley and Estevan in the standings with 54 points, I believe. Yeah, 54 points. They are 8-0, 0-1 in their last 9 games. Just a crazy run, and like at the perfect time of year for the Weyburn Red Wings. If you guys remember last year, Weyburn was out of a playoff spot. Just like a couple weeks ago at this time last year, they were out of a playoff spot. At the trade deadline, they acquired Riley Morgan from the L'Orange Ice Wolves, and he just propelled them through like a crazy hot streak at the end of the year. And it's not exactly the same as last year, but you know there isn't a better time of the year to get hot, and Weyburn is red hot. The Red Wings are red hot. So again, they're in 6th place now. 39 saves from Dazza Mitchell and 3-point nights from Cade Micklejohn and Jackson Ruthven elevated the Wings to the W on Tuesday night. Johan Trombley-Cal, though, 30 saves on the night. But it wasn't quite good enough for the Notre Dame Hounds. Nipawin, again, the game, whoever lost this game, Nipawin and Yorkton, was eliminated mathematically from the playoffs. They were both hanging on by a thread, and Nipawin still is at the moment, but they did keep their playoff hopes alive with a 5-2 win over Yorkton, who are now eliminated. Nipawin still has their hope, but this is the scenario here, more or less. Nipawin has to win in regulation every single game going forward the rest of the way, and they have 4 games left, so they have to win all 4, and Estevan would have to lose all 3, and I'm pretty sure, hypothetically, to help their case, Kindersley would also have to lose the last 2 games that they have on their schedule as well. So a lot has to go right for Nipawin, but a good first step by beating Yorkton on Tuesday night. Very spread out offensive production for Nipawin on this one, but a goal and assist from Artem Rabovetsky. I'm pretty sure I said that right. I haven't said that in a few months. And 2 assists from Chase Visser, plus a 34-save performance from Tyson Endall propelled them to the win against the Yorkton Terriers. And, of course, on Wednesday, we had 3 more games. Humboldt 6-2 win over Estevan. Now, this one was a very interesting one if you saw the lineups going into the game. Estevan only dressed 14 skaters. They didn't have a 4th line. I think they only dressed 5 defensemen. So it was a bit of a short bench for Jason Tatarnik and company as they have some injuries going on. If you looked at their scratched players on their lineup, it was a who's who of the Estevan Bruins. It was a lot of good players. A lot of their best players were on that list. So they were in tough. But they did score the first goal 7 minutes into the game. Felix Allard scored his 19th of the season. But the Broncos, the Humboldt Broncos sitting where they are in the standings, 4th place, pushing for 3rd, with a basically full lineup on their side. A little bit too much for the Estevan Bruins on this one. And, with Estevan, like I said, injuries and some suspensions looming, they gave them all they could. And Jackson Miller, I think he had, 34 saves on the night, but it was a busy night for him in the net. Benjamin Motu had 28 saves, and 10 players recorded points for the Broncos, including 2-point nights from Spencer Bell and Travis Bryson. So this loss for Estevan means they still have not yet clinched their playoff spot, but, as I said earlier, they would have to lose every single game in regulation, I believe, and Nipawin would have to win every single game. So, Bruins fans, you can exhale a little bit for now. The chances that you're going to make the playoffs are still, percentage-wise, quite high. They do need to pick up a point or 2 here going forward, but again, I don't think you need to panic or push the panic button quite yet. But with the win, Humboldt moved to 70 points, which is just now 1 point behind the Battlefords North Stars for 3rd, and they have won 3 games in a row. Now, the funny part that I mentioned on SJHL Game Day yesterday was that the Humboldt Broncos hadn't played since February 24th against the Larange Ice Wolves. And I joked, are they going to remember how to play the sport? Well, they did. They did remember, and they won 6-2. So wasn't surprised that they remembered how to play. They are pretty good players. But Melfort won 3-1 over the Flin Bombers, and we'll talk about this game a little bit more with Rob Hart coming up shortly. But Melfort pushes their win streak to 7 games. And Flon now, one of the weirder stat lines at the moment in the SJHL, 4-5-0-1 in their last 10 games for a team with 47 wins on the season. With just 3 or 4 games remaining for them. That's an odd stat line. I don't think they've had 5 games in any 10-game stretches, or 5 losses in any 10-game stretches this entire season. So to have 5 of their 7 losses in the last 10 games is a weird stat line. It's weird for them. But maybe a little adversity isn't the worst thing in the world for Mike Reagan's team up there in Flin-Flon. Ryan Duguay is back, and he put up a goal and an assist for the Mustangs, and James Venn was his usual self. 34 saves on 35 shots from the Bombers. Harmon Laser-Hume was also solid with 32 saves in the loss as well. 12 minor penalties in this one, 6 and 6. Split it right down the middle for the teams, and 2 10-minute misconducts. So it was a playoff atmosphere at the Northern Lights Palace between these 2 teams, and they're gearing up as they could potentially meet in a very important series coming up in the SJHL playoffs. So I'm sure that this was the first of a potential few meetings that these teams are going to have that won't be friendly necessarily. Melville took a 7-1 win over the Notre Dame Hounds on Wednesday night. 4 goals from Bradley Bannock, 4 goals, and 4 assists from Hudson Norris propelled the Mills to a 7-goal night. Caden Drury, Matt Seamus, Jaden Iogan, and Luke Beadle also all had 2-point nights, and Ethan Rao and net went 19 for 20. In the crease, so a nice night from Ethan Rao as well. Melville has now won 4 games in a row, and they're 7-2-0-1 in their last 10 games, as they're also getting hot at the right time. We talk about Weyburn. Melville's also getting hot at the right time, especially when they're battling. Every game right now for Melville in the last month or 2 has been battling for playoff positioning, and they're now in 5th place. They have a 3-point cushion in 5th place. And you know what? Topic number 2 is the standings. So let's go ahead and bring up the standings now. I'll have a look at how the last 2 nights have kind of shook down the standings as they sit today. Again, Humboldt. Humboldt has trouble on this standings graphic. They have 70 points, not 10. It's a big difference, but 70. It's close. But as we go through the standings here, as you can see, Kindersley and Estevan still hang on to those final 2 playoff spots, 7th and 8th. Although they are in 10th, though, Nipawin is the only other team that can potentially get into a playoff spot. So 2 of those 3 teams will be making the playoffs. That's mathematically decided at this point. And it does look funny because Yorkton is eliminated in 9th. Nipawin's not eliminated in 10th. But, of course, look at the games played. Nipawin has 4 games played for a potential 8 points, which would put them to 53. So if Kindersley gets an overtime loss in their next 2 games, they're in. And if Estevan just needs 2 points, and they're in. And if Nipawin loses at all, even in overtime, they're out. So that's kind of how that works right now. Melfort and Weyburn are the 2 hottest teams right now. Melfort has 7 straight wins. Weyburn is 8-0-0-1 in their last 9. So they are red hot right now. Like I said at the right time, Melfort, look at them right now, 75 points. They're now 4 points up on Battleford's, where Battleford's had a cushion on them not that long ago. So that's pretty crazy. Battleford's, I mentioned Flon's weird last 10 games. Battleford's is 0-4-1-0 in their last 5 games. So they, like I said, they had a cushion in second. And now Melfort has, soared past them. Melfort has 3 games left. Battleford's 4 games left. Humboldt, Melville, and Weyburn all have 5 games remaining, so they have the most opportunity to gain ground or add cushion to where they currently are. So that's a big deal as well. And Yorkton, La Ronge, and Notre Dame, like I said earlier, have all been officially eliminated from the playoff race. So that's the standings as it sits today. Again, lots can change still in the last few games, so lots coming up, and we'll get to that later in the show with the upcoming schedule. Finally, topic 3. This is a really interesting graphic, and big shout out to Jamie Neugebauer, who's been around the offices, of course, as he enters his new role with us here at IKS Media and the SJHL. But he came up with this really interesting graphic with the playoff matchups as they sit today, and then like the remaining schedule and difficulty of schedule. So if we can bring up the first one there, this is the battle for 2nd to 4th. So we talked about Melfort, Battlefords, and Humboldt already. But as you can see on the left, Flon right now would be playing Estevan. Humboldt will be playing Melville. Melfort, Kindersley, Battleford's, Weyburn. Battleford's, Weyburn, of course, was the round 1 matchup last year. So I can't imagine that would be a great series. Flin, Estevan, great rivalry. Humboldt, Melville would be a great series. Those 2 teams they would play each other so well. And Melfort, Kindersley, that would be also another. They're kind of an old rival from years gone by, but that would be a great matchup as well. But you look at the remaining schedules. Melfort, with 3 games left, they have a pretty strong schedule, 536 win percentage of their opponents. Battleford's a 589 win percentage of their opponents with 4 games left. And Humboldt, harder than all of them, with 5 games left, a 668 win percentage of their opposition. So very tough schedules for those 3 teams. And then if we go to the next graphic, this is the battle for 5th to 8th. And you see in terms of win percentages, a little bit lower. You see Melville there with a 469. Kindersley has a very difficult schedule. And if I can just pull it up really quick, they play, I didn't prep this. This was not part of my show prep. I should have had it. But Kindersley finishes off their season with 2 games, Battlefords. So that's why their remaining schedule is so difficult. 2 games against Battlefords, that'll do it to you. Weyburn with a 480 opponent win percentage, and Estevan with a 453 in 3 games remaining. So, you look at Estevan's playoff chances, of course, we talked about it. All they need to do is get a win. 2 points is all they need. And favorably sitting in the rest of their schedule, they still have to win the games that are ahead of them regardless. Doesn't matter. It's not going to be easy, especially with Estevan's injury situation and with their potential suspension situation as well, which more news will be coming out about soon, I'm sure. So stay tuned for that on sjhl.ca. And then if we can pull up the last one. Again, this is just kind of a look at what could the playoffs look like. Like I said earlier, Flin, Estevan, round 1. Like, is anybody's heart ready for that? Like, that's just like a crazy how that's worked out this year with Estevan sitting in 8th and Flin, of course, sitting in 1st. These 2 teams met in the finals not that long ago. These 2 teams have seen each other almost every playoff series, or almost every year in the playoffs for the last few years. They do not like each other. And if you remember, just a weekend or two ago, I talk about suspensions for Estevan and Flon. There was a dust up, I'll call it, at the Whitney Forum at the end of the game. And that, I'm sure, will be, if that happens, a great series. Humboldt-Melville, again, these two teams. Will Dyke, the former Humboldt Bronco goaltender, is now in Melville. They have played such great games against each other all year. That's a really good 4 versus 5 matchup, I think. Melfort Kindersley, I think Kindersley is one of those teams that can, if they get some goaltending at the right time, they have the scoring ability, they have the balanced roster. I think they could surprise, but man, Melfort's been so good lately. It's hard to see them bowing out in the first round to any team. And Battleford's Weyburn, again, they saw each other last year in the playoffs. It was a animosity-filled series. Weyburn got that first win after Battleford's hadn't lost in such a long time, and then Battleford's came back and I think beat them 4 straight, right? So, I mean, I can't imagine those two teams wouldn't. I think they would like to see each other in the first round. I think Weyburn wants some revenge, and Battleford's wants to stick it to them again. So, 4 unbelievable series if that's how it lines up. As of today, that's of course how it's going to be. But like I said, with Melville sitting 3 points up on Weyburn, but Weyburn, Kindersley, and Estevan all just within 2 points of each other, you know, this could all change by the weekend. So who knows exactly, but as of right now, that's an exciting couple of series that I think all SJHL fans would be very excited about. But with that in mind, we are going to hit the video chat line now and be joined by our friend from up in Flin, Flon, Rob Hart. Here we go. All right, is Rob Hart in the flesh, voice of the Flin Flon Bombers, of course. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, my pleasure. Absolutely. Anytime you get a chance to talk hockey, it's always a good thing, especially the SJHL, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this time of year, there's not much better than junior hockey in the playoff stretch and leading up to the playoffs. So, Rob, let's start. Last night, you were in Melfort, a 3-1 loss to the Melfort Mustangs. Again, we'll get into this a little bit, but a few losses now for the Bombers in the last little while. But let's stick with Melfort last night. What went wrong for the Bombers, or I guess maybe what went right for Melfort?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I think what went wrong for Flin Flon was 0 for 6 on the power play, which is a big factor. And goalpost to crossbars. Isn't it funny when you're struggling to score? You know, earlier in the year, really up maybe 3/4 of the season, Flin Flon had no trouble with the puck in the net. And now all those elite scorers are having a tough time. I know they had a power play last night. Lees hit the post. Anderson hit the post. Sylvester did get a goal last night. He also had a breakaway to tie the game in the third period. He hit the post. So some really bad puck luck going on, but you got to get Mel for credit. I mean, that's a good quality hockey team. James Venn was good when he had to be up for MVP of the league, and you know, Melfort 7 straight wins. They're going to be. I'll tell you what, whoever wins the SJHL, they're going to have to go through Melfort and the Northern Lights Palace. That's a quality club.
Yeah, they have been rock solid, and you know we had Aiden Hutchinson on SJHL Weekly this week, and you know he kind of mentioned it with the Melfort Mustangs. They didn't really make too many moves around the trade deadline because you know Trevor Blevins had a lot of confidence in that group, and I don't think that Mike Reagan didn't have confidence in his group up in Flin Flon. But maybe let's go to there now. At the trade deadline, the Bombers were one of the more active teams. I think you know Mike Reagan's had enough runs now. He knows what it takes to win. So he went out and got some, you know, what appeared on paper to be very good pieces for the team. And they added guys like Keith Gruner, Anthony Bax, Jeremy Gilbert, Tyson Smith, Connor Ryan. But who's been the biggest impact from that group of players? And are they all finding their fits on the team at this point?
Well, I thought Bax played really good for Flin Flon last night. I mean, he brings in obviously a guy that I think that they really wanted some secondary offense from the back end, which I totally understand. I think Bax is really, I think maybe trying to do maybe a little bit too much right now as the team is struggling, but I thought he played really well last night. And, you know, I think they're still kind of waiting for the other guys to break out. I mean, Ryan looks like he's got a really, didn't play last night, but looks like he's got a really bright future. He's pretty young. He seems like he's pretty confident to me. He's got lots of talent, but certainly I think the one thing for Flin Flon right now, not just the new guys, but people have been in place all year, they got to find a way to score some goals. They got to find a way to get some secondary scoring. As you and I were chatting before, I guess we went to air on the program today. You know, Alexis Silvestri's been doing it all. He's got they hit 30 goals last night, 7 goals in his last 7. But Justin Lees and Carter Anderson, arguably the 2 best goal scorers, or certainly 2 of the best goal scorers in the league. They got 3 goals combined the last 7. They're having a tough time right now. But like you and I also discussed, I mean, you can always look at see what the Bombers aren't doing, but there's a team out there trying to stop them. And again, when you're one of the top programs in the country, everybody wants to beat you. When you're the number 1 team in the league, everybody wants to beat you. And of course, like we said, with the tight standings right now, a lot of teams been in playoff mode. And I really feel that on some nights, not last night, but a lot of nights lately, the Bombers have maybe had a tough time matching the energy of their opponent, and it's been tough to score.
Yeah, so Rob, I think there's two ways of looking at this season when I look at Flin Flon. I think if we would have sat down today or at the beginning of the season and I said, Rob, at this point in the year with 4 games left, the Bombers are going to be 42, 7, 2, and 1. I think you would have said, well, that's an accomplishment. That's a great season. But if I would have told you 2 weeks ago that they would have be 4, 5, 1, and 0 in their next 10 games, you probably would have called me crazy. So what are your thoughts on the season as a whole to this point? I mean, it's not that it's been a roller coaster, but like I said, there was a stretch of dominance, and then now recently it hasn't quite been that way. So overall, what are your thoughts on this season for the Bombers so far?
Well, I mean, I think it's been a great year. I mean, anytime you have less than 10 losses in a season, I mean, and you take a look at Flin Flon's goals against as well. I mean, by far, that give up the fewest amount of goals in the league. That's the two big stats that jump out at me. But we also got to remember the parent of the SJHL. And I mean, not to take anything away from the year that Flin Flon's had, but you cut to this time of the year, teams are bowling up for the playoffs. I still say, I don't care what BC and Alberta say, the SJHL, in my opinion, is still the toughest junior A league to win. And I think Flin Flon's finding that out. I mean, teams aren't just going to roll over for you. There's other teams that have chances to win the league as well. We talk about Melfort. Humboldt is coming on. I know Battleford's in a bit of a slide, but they are the defending league champions, and they've got a great program there. And who knows with Melville and Weyburn, they're getting really hot. Can they upset somebody in the first round? So I think, yeah, I mean, Flin Flon's struggled a bit, but you got to give credit to some of the other teams in the parity of this league, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. We've been talking about that all year on this broadcast and on SJHL Weekly. Just how, I don't there's in the bottom 4 in the playoffs right now, when you talk about Melville, Weyburn, Estevan, Kindersley, in whatever order they end up in. I don't think there's a team in that group that anybody's going to say, like, I want this team in the first round. Like, I don't
Right.
think I don't think one of those teams exists this year. I think they're all going to be tough outs regardless. There might be some 4-1 series or something like that, but I don't think the games are going to be one-sided by any stretch necessarily. So it is this year, 1 through 8, and even beyond. There's been some really, really great teams this year, and it's going to be really fun to see how the first round matchups. And we'll get into the first round matchups before you get out of here, Rob. I have some talk about that as well. But before we get there, the SJHL Award nominees came out this week, and the Bombers are obviously well represented. But Justin Lees, to me, is one that stands out, and he's nominated for Forward of the Year. Some people maybe argued that he should have been in the MVP category, but Forward of the Year is he's well deserving to be in that category. And can you just tell me about the impact that he's had on this Bombers team after a lengthy WHL career before this, and now he comes here as a 20-year-old?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great. He's from Flin Flon, born and raised, and had a chance to play a handful of games for the Bombers in that one short COVID year. But he does everything. I mean, leads the league in shorthanded goals, amongst the league leaders in goals and points, and just one of the best skaters I've seen. This guy can just control the puck. He sees the ice so well, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the Bombers have struggled last little while, because they've been so dependent on what he's done for this group all year long, and he's had a bit of a slump the last little while, which proves, I guess, he's only human, just like anybody else. But he's a terrific player. He's exciting to watch, and no about it. For Flin Flon to get back on track, Lees is going to have to be part of that. He's the leader of the club, and like I said, he does a lot of things for this team, and I couldn't imagine having him going into the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. And earlier you mentioned Alexi Silvestri. You mentioned Jacob Vockler. We've talked at length about Noah Houle on the show, but
Carter Anderson.
Carter Anderson. I mean, there's a ton of offense and production up front and on the blue line. But one thing that I also wanted to just bring up is how good their goaltending has been. And you talk about Harmon Laser-Hume and Kenneth Marquardt, the 20-year-old and the 18-year-old respectively. They're leading the league in pretty much any goaltending category you can think of. Just how good have they been? Some people say that they have an elite team in front of them, but even when you have an elite team in front of you, your goalies still have to be good, and they have been quite good.
Sure.
They lead the league in goals against, both of them, and they both are tied for the league in save percentage, and they're right up there for shutouts as well, of course. And I think sometimes shutouts are a team stat, but regardless, they're up there. So how good have these two guys been anchoring the crease for the Bombers this year?
Well, you mentioned, I mean, shutouts. I think they tied for 7 this year, which is fantastic. I think the one thing, guys, I've the last years, anytime they need to win a big game, they've been able to do it. And I remember last year in the playoffs with Harmon, first series, of course, got off to a bit of a start. There's some concerns, but boy, when they had Humboldt in the second round, Harmon played. I mean, the first round series against Estevan had a lot of ups and downs, but when he needed to play big, he did. I'll never forget that Game 5 performance that Harmon had in Estevan last year. Might be the best game I've ever seen him play. A lot of people had Flin Flon counted out and about. I guess it was Game 6. Estevan won Game 5 for Game 6, facing elimination. But Harmon was electric and played good in Game 7. And that Humboldt series, he was incredible as well. So that's the one big thing. Stats, I get it, the stats are important, but in my opinion, anytime that either one of those guys needs to win a big game, they're capable of doing it.
Absolutely. And another guy who's he's been to almost every level possible at this SJHL level in terms of success, except recently the winning one at the end of the season, Mike Reagan, again nominated for Coach of the Year. Very, very well deserved, of course. And he's put this team in a position to not only contend, but finally get over that hump that they just haven't quite been able to get over in the last little while. Do you think that this team put together, at least on paper, on the ice from what you've seen, has the ability to do that this year?
Well, absolutely. I mean, like they've won 42 games. I mean, they're 2 away from tying their franchise record in wins, which was done with the Royal Bank Cup team in 2001. I think that this team does figure it out. They're going to be extremely dangerous. The one thing that Mike was mentioning to me, throughout the season, we've been talking about the success of the team was the will to win. So I think that's the one thing we're going to see what they have. Just 4 games for Flin Flon remaining in the regular season. I think that, he was mentioning that's something that I was getting from the players was their will and desire to win. And we'll see if they can get that certainly postseason, which is obviously the most important time of the year. It's the one thing that's eluded Mike. You talk about success. Even without a league championship, I don't think he can say he hasn't been successful. He's got players. Flon goes deep in the pretty much single year. They're financially secure. They've got a program that players want to come to. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I think he'll tell you too that a lot of players are reaching out to him to come play for this team. It's organized, recognized around the world. So, yeah, they haven't had the league championship yet, but I think it's been very, very successful, and certainly I'm glad to be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. You can't argue with the numbers that all of the team as a whole has put up this year. Absolutely. And like you said, the sustainable success that the Flin Flon Bombers have been is a huge testament to Mike Reagan and company and everyone involved, of course. But one of the best stories on the ice and off the ice this year across the league, not just in Flin Flon, I'm going to say across the league, has been Matt Egan and his battle with cancer and his return to the team. So can you tell me how big, how huge Matt has been for that locker room this year and the community as a whole? I think it's an amazing story.
Matt's been with the team now for the better part of 3 years. He was with them when they went to the Centennial Cup a couple of years ago, and just a terrific young man. I mean, I'm not surprised that he came back as quickly as he did. He's in fantastic shape. He's just one of those kids that you hear. He's just a really, really good. His family's fantastic, and you want to talk about somebody that bleeds maroon. How about Matt? I think that's the best way to describe him. A guy that bleeds maroon.
Yeah, absolutely. And you love to see it. And I think we're all rooting for him as well. Maybe not his playoff opponents necessarily on the ice, but I think in general, we're all rooting for him for continued success. And it was great to see that he also got some college hockey news as well recently. So that's awesome. So final one for you, Rob. I'm going to ask you this one. As of today, the Estevan Bruins are facing the Flin Flon Bombers in round 1 of the playoffs. Is your heart ready for another Bruins-Bombers playoff battle at this time?
I guess we'll find out. It's either Estevan or Kinnersley. I think Weybur's just playing too well. I don't think it's going to be them. Is my heart ready for it? Are the fan bases ready for it? I mean, 3 years in a row. I mean, this has got to be the best rivalry in the NHL. Not?
I think it has to be. There's only a few other geographical ones that I can think of, but in terms of just overall on the ice hatred for each other, I think this has to be it.
Well, I look at what just happened this past Saturday. Of course, wasn't happened to the game as well. And it's interesting. For as maybe bad it's looked for Estevan with some of their players being suspended and kind of down. that might be the perfect thing to motivate them if they go to play Flin Flon. Can you imagine a better motivational boost than that? So if they do meet the playoffs, there's already a story heading in with what happened in the last regular season visit. So there's always lots of stuff besides the hockey between these two teams.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be awesome. And if it does play out that way, I just pray for you and everybody in that rink and both rinks that their hearts don't explode, because the excitement around those games will be so much fun. But, Rob, that's all I got for you today. I always appreciate talking to you, and best of luck to yourself and to the Bombers up north going forward here in the last few games and into the playoffs.
I appreciate it. Always great to come on and talk hockey with you guys. And how's my buddy Jacob Faith doing? I haven't seen him for a while.
Oh, he's doing just fantastic. He's doing great, and I'm sure he won't bat an eyelash at a chance to get up there and have a chat with you in Flin Flon, Rob.
Well, I hope so. I was thinking that maybe he forgot where the Whitney Farm was. I haven't for a while.
Ooh, you know what? I'm going to have a chat with Jacob about that. I'm sure he'll get up there.
It's always great to see him, and he does a great job just like you guys do. So please pass regards and keep up the great work. Wonderful job you guys do for the SJHL again. And thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely. Well, of course, that was the legendary Rob Hart up in Flin Flon, longtime voice of the team and just an overall great guy. If you want to talk SJHL, there is a short list of people that would be more fun and better to talk to than Rob for any time of the year. But we got to get into our final segment here as we continue the show here, and that's going to, of course, we have to look ahead to the rest of the week, which is there's a big weekend coming up here, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So let's have a look at Friday's schedule now, if you guys don't mind pulling that up. As we get into it, there's 5 games on Friday. Melville plays Weyburn, and this game could have a huge impact on the standings. Of course, Weyburn is 3 points back of Melville right now, so if they win, they shrink that right down to 1 point. Notre Dame plays Estevan. Estevan has a chance to clinch that playoff spot if they can beat Notre Dame. They just need 2 points, and they get the clinch. Larange plays Flin Flon, so we'll see how Flin Flon bounces back from that game against Melfort. Nipawin needs a win here to keep their playoff hopes alive against probably the hottest team in the league right now. In terms of at least winning streaks. We talked about Weyburn earlier, but 7 wins in a row for Melfort. So they take that back to home to play. I guess they were already home last game, but Nipawin heads there to face the Melfort Mustangs. And the Humboldt Broncos against the Battlefords North Stars. And again, this will determine third place in the league, this game. If Battlefords wins, they keep it. If Humboldt wins, they pass Battlefords. Going into Saturday night, just the 2 games. It's a bit more of a quiet night. Again, Weyburn-Melville rematch. And again, if Weyburn can somehow pull off the win Friday night, they can move ahead of Melville on Saturday as well. So that'll be a huge game for that one. And again, Battlefords and Humboldt. So that's another one that will potentially determine third place. And then a game on Sunday as well. Sorry, 2 games, I should say. Flin Flon and Nipawin. And again, Nipawin, if they win on Friday against Melfort, they will have a chance to continue their playoff hopes. If they lose, this one won't matter as much in terms of the standings. But Nipawin needs to win every single game. So they have 2 of the hardest opponents to do that this weekend. And Larange plays Melfort as well. Again, Melfort looks to stay hot as they enter the playoff race. So that is the weekend that we are looking forward to. So 9 games again this weekend. My game of the week choice, I think, has to be the Weyburn-Melville series or the Battlefords Humboldt. If I had 2 people here, if I was interviewing myself, one would pick Melville-Weyburn, and one would pick Melville-Weyburn. That would be where I was sitting before when Jeremy was hosting the show. So I'm going to say Melville-Weyburn. And then Jeremy would probably say, well, I'm going to pick Battlefords and Humboldt because that's, determining third place. So those, to me, are the 2, games or series of the weekend. Very exciting games. And the other ones all have great opportunity for some big moments as well. But to me, those 2 have the most riding on them this weekend. Get out to the rinks. They're going to be fantastic. So, that kind of does it here for the show here today. But make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels. Of course, that is our YouTube page, which you may or may not be watching this show on right now. Our Facebook page, which you can follow everything there. X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We're posting a lot of stuff on TikTok as well on a weekly basis. And get your Flow Hockey subscription as well. That's where you can watch all of the games if you can't make it to the rink. get a Flow Hockey subscription, and you can watch all the games. That's fantastic as well. And thank you to our sponsors again. Of course, UPL, our presenting sponsor for this broadcast and all of our other major broadcasts. Borgo, Cantera Seeds, Capital Auto Mall, Chevrolet, Great Western, Nutrient, RBC, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Sask Lotteries, Tourism Saskatchewan, Sask Energy, SGEU, and SGI. Are amazing sponsors. But again, make sure you get out to the rinks this weekend. These games are huge. You're running out of chances to see your team at the home rink, so make sure you get out to there and support them, and you know, buy tickets for next year. Buy season tickets. Support the teams. You know, get ahead of the game. You want to get those early bird specials. You know, but there are 9 games across the SJHL this weekend. So again, if you can't make it to the rink, which I recommend doing, get your Flow Hockey subscriptions and tune in that way. But there are 9 games, so I'm going to let you guys go and get to your weekends. Enjoy your weekends and enjoy the hockey, everyone.